Hello and welcome to another Nihongo Gamer video. So excited because today we got our first look at PS5, the PlayStation 5, which according to the announcement today, it looks like it's still going to be holiday 2020. I thought, given the situation with the pandemic, the virus going around in 2020, I assumed that maybe PS5 would get bumped to sometime in 2021, but hey, it looks like everything's on schedule. Very exciting presentation, having a look at some of the new games going to be coming out as well. I've got to admit that the presentation today, there were a number of games that were like, they look like PS2 quality or lower, and I know that these are games that are still in development, but it's like, for the reveal of what they said right at the beginning of the presentation, the biggest generational jump in quality ever for a console, I didn't really expect to see so many PS2 quality games in the presentation, but you know, it's nice, and I'm not saying that those games don't deserve to be there, but I feel like they just needed to show off what the PS5 is capable of. And I feel like with the demo of Ratchet and Clank, they showed that PS5 is not only powerful, but the benefits of having the SSD built in means that it's going to be able to load large levels very, very quickly. So in the demo, they were showing characters jumping from like one world through a teleporting thing into some other world with a completely different environment. It's very impressive. But what you probably want to know is details on the console itself. And that's what I was interested as well. I was watching all these games. I was like, I don't really care about this game. I don't really care about that game. And that looks okay. Look, that looks like a PS4 game. Big whoop. I was really waiting for this. So this is the PS5 hardware announcement bit of the trailer, and it went something like this. You saw these swoops in and out of the fan vents of the console, and I find that really interesting because the way that they've designed the console kind of reminds me of the design of the Mac Pro. Apple, when they made their new Mac, they were like, okay, we're going to have air come in through the front and it's going to go out through the back. The intake would be at the front and the exhaust would be at the back. I don't actually know if that's what's happening with the PS5, but it does seem to have that capability because the fan goes right up to the front of the console, around the top of it, and then probably, I assume, round to the back. As you can see, the first pan they showed us of the front of the console shows a USB-A port and what I'm assuming is a USB-C port. So I guess if you're playing with arcade sticks, you're going to have to, if you're using like PS4 arcade sticks, you're probably going to have one person use a USB-A to USB-C adapter. Now, partly through this presentation of the PS5 hardware, they actually showed us this one first, this is the main PS5. So there's actually going to be two different versions of this console. This is the PS5 with a disk drive. You can see that there, and there's an extra bump on the console because of the disk drive. But then after that, they showed another swoop through the console and revealed that actually it's the diskless version, the driveless version of the PS5. And I have no idea what the actual benefit of that's going to be. I don't think it's going to run faster. I don't think it's going to run cooler. It's not like it has battery life to think about. I assume that the only point of this console is just one, to look sleek for people who want a sleek looking console, one that's a little bit lighter, a little bit slimmer, and hopefully a little bit cheaper. I'm assuming that the main benefit of taking the disk drive out is that it's going to reduce the cost of making it, because given the parts that they've talked about, because the previous presentation for PS5 was all tech. It was like all tech and all the actual hardware that's on the inside, and it was a heavy video, and it was obvious that the SSD that they're trying to put in here and the way they're trying to match the SSD with the rest of the computational units and have information go in and out of it super quickly, it's going to be probably quite pricey. And I assume that taking the disk drive away is going to drop it from being crazy expensive to slightly less crazy expensive. Actually, I don't even know what the retail price was announced for. Did they? Let's just double check. All right, I don't see any firm information on the price of the PS5 yet, but I guess that it's going to be more expensive than when the PS4 launched. Hopefully not too much more expensive. Now, this is one thing I noticed about the PlayStation 5 in the announcement trailer, is that the PlayStation 5 base model has a different base. The base has a different base. So this is the footage that they showed in the final sort of gameplay trailer for the console. And I saw this, I was like, oh, okay, so you can actually lie it sideways. I thought maybe the way that the console's designed, the air intake, maybe it has to be standing up to function correctly. But then they showed this. Clearly, it is able to lie flat, but I don't think you'll be stacking any other consoles on top of it. In fact, right now, my PlayStation 4 has a PlayStation 3 sitting on top of it because, you know, it's flat, rectangular shaped, and it helps me save space. So I've actually got consoles stacked on top of each other. Maybe I'm not supposed to do that. But it looks like with the PS5, that's going to be a little bit tricky. You can lie it sideways, and you can see there's that base that we were looking at earlier there. So on the PS5 base, you can see that there is for keeping it stood upright, but then you can actually take it off the base, lie it flat, and it will sit using the contoured shape of it to prevent the console from rocking around on your table. One thing that I did think was a little bit strange about the console is that the inner plastic that is housing the console itself, it has this weird texture to it, and I don't know why they went for this texture. Maybe it's just going to, I don't know, feel nice when you pick it up, but it seems like a bit of a strange mix with the rest of the smoothness. I suppose having this texture on the white plastic makes the parts where the black plastic just, maybe it feels smoother as a result of being near something which is rougher in texture. I doubt it has anything to do with the airflow for the cooling of the console. I think both the base console and the digital version of the console look fantastic, and what I really like is how it matches the controller in design. The PlayStation 4 was a bit of a disappointment, in my opinion. I thought it was an amazing success as a console, but as a design, when they first showed the PS4, I was like, well, the PS3 had been so interesting in shape, and the PS2 had gone from an interesting shape to a smaller, slimmer version of that interesting shape. PS4 came out, it was like, it's the Xbox One, but slightly slanted to the side. And then in addition, like the DS4, I think it feels fantastic and it looks awesome, but honestly, there wasn't really a whole lot going on. This is basically the design that they had been using for the past, 15 years up until that point. But this design for the PS5, it's so bizarrely, and the real joke is on Twitter. Most people are posting photos of comparisons between PS5 and a network router, or network router, if you will. And it does look a lot like a Wi-Fi router. I'm pretty sure I have actually seen a Wi-Fi router with this design, with the black plastic in the middle, and maybe black plastic on the sides as well, but with the collar shape. Though it is nice to have consoles that are designed to be standing as their main shape, because I'm pretty sure when I bought my Xbox 360, I bought the Final Fantasy 13 like special edition one, and it had a faceplate, and the faceplate was a design of the character on the front of the console in upright. The console had to be upright for the image to be correct. So compared to the PS4, this is definitely a console I'd be happier having stood up. In the back of my videos, for example, like I've got my devices back there lit up and flashing and all that. PS5 is another console that I would be quite happy to have up there. PS4, like, there's no real reason for me to put a PS4 up in the background of my videos because it's a dull-looking console. But PS5, by comparison, I think it looks fantastic. It does look like a Wi-Fi router, but apart from that, I don't think the memes really go much further. Now, in addition to the console, we also got a quick look at the controller. Now, I don't know what it's going to feel like, but because those buttons are clear, unlike the buttons that we've got here, I'm hoping it's going to feel a little bit closer to the PSP. I love the D-pad on the PS Vita and the PSP. And hopefully, maybe the new PS5 controller is going to be as close as possible to this, because I love the DualShock controller, but maybe with the clean clickiness of the PS Vita. Also, you can see that on the original controller, we had words. It said options here, and it said share here, but on the new controller, it's just got 3 lines sideways for the options button. And the share button's like 3 lines in a sort of crown shape. I've never seen that icon before. I guess that's the new share icon that they're going for. And is that what's going on with the PS button? I can see the PS logo here, but it looks like underneath the PS logo on the opposite side, there's a small slit-shaped button. Either that's a button or a light. I haven't actually looked that up yet. Also, interestingly enough, they didn't talk about any of the biometric like reading of data in the trailer today. I think I had heard, and I don't know if this is still going to be a thing, I had heard that the controller was going to read your galvanic skin response to know whether you're sweating in certain situations and whether you're in a scared state. I guess they could work this into their horror games to give you even more frightening scares, or just generally to collect biometric data about their player base, which will invariably end up being sold to other companies for market research. But alas, I digress. They didn't seem to talk about it at all in this trailer. Wireless controller, charging station, HD camera, wireless headset, media remote. Here's a couple features that they did talk about during the presentation. They have haptic feedback, so obviously it's gonna vibrate like every controller has done basically for the past 15 years. And adaptive triggers. Now, we heard about this before the presentation today, but adaptive triggers, I assume that means that it's gonna be like tougher to push on the trigger. So maybe if you're playing a game where you're firing a gun, maybe it will have like a click instead of being a slow motion like this. Or maybe if you're driving, there will be more tension, so you'll have to like push harder to like accelerate your car. They don't look quite as concave as these ones. The nice thing about the DualShock 4 is it has these concave triggers, and on the PS3, one of the main complaints of the PS3 controller was that your finger would like slide off the R2 button because it didn't have a concave shape. It looks like they've gone for something halfway in between with this one. This trigger looks like it's concave, but not very concave, like a more gentle concave shape. Now, one thing we didn't get a look at is the back of the console. So although we can see that there are two USB ports here on the front, I don't have any angles of the back of the console. So I'm just guessing that it's got a LAN port for Ethernet. I assume that it's got the power cable there at the back as well. Hopefully it doesn't plug into the base or anything weird like that. I assume that this here is just an LED for whether it's accessing the hard disk or whether it's on or whatever. That, or it's a touch sensitive button for power. Talking of which, this button does look very similar to the button here on the DualSense pad. So who knows, maybe the PS button is touch sensitive. And that's pretty much all I know about the PlayStation 5 so far from the presentation today. That was the first time we got to actually look at the console. I think it's a very exciting looking console. It doesn't have to look like this, but because it's got a striking look, that'll help create a buzz around the console so that they can sell more units. And then obviously they sell more units, the console is more popular, more developers will want to develop for it, and then we'll get more games. So everybody wins basically. Honestly, I wasn't super excited about the titles that they showed us, the video game titles that they showed us today. It felt like there were a lot of returns of PS2 games. There was like Ratchet and Clank, Little Big Planet, Oddworld. What? And again, not complaining about any of those titles, just like, whoa, I wasn't expecting to see like so many blasts from the past. I guess all we want to know now is how much is it going to cost? What's the details on the digital edition? Is it going to cost a lot less than the version with the disk drive? Is it going to perform differently? Is it going to have extra features as a result of not having the disk drive? That and the release date. I guess I really want to know when I can get my hands on a PS5. I think for fighting games and tournaments, I guess the main thing that's going to be a bother is that there's not two USB-A ports on the front. So people are going to continue to use their arcade sticks that they've been using for a long time. And if they don't have a converter to go from USB-A to USB-C, I hope there's another USB-A port on the back. But if there isn't, then you may run into situations at tournaments where it's like, my stick's A, so I can go into the port on the right, but then the port on the left is USB-C and I don't have the adapter, and what do I do? And to prevent situations like that, I do hope that there is another USB-A shaped port on the back, but even if there's not, people will be fine if they can just remember to bring a USB-A to USB-C converter. I guess one other thing that's going to be a little bit frustrating for people who organize events is that if the console can't be stacked, then you can't make like a tower of PlayStations. When you're putting them away for storage, you're going to have to find a way to store these without damaging them. Either have some soft clothing or some blankets in between each PlayStation so that if you're layering them on top of each other, they don't shift around too much. Because of this shape, it does make it a little bit more difficult to store a large number of them. So I guess for tournaments, that could be a little bit of a problem. But if you're just bringing in your PlayStation 5 around to your mate's house, because it'd be so much easier to carry now, because it's like a perfect shape to mold against your body and your arm, under your arm. You can lug your PlayStation 5 around with you. I also just want to slightly reflect on how important the release of PS5 probably is going to be, because when PS3 moved on to PS4, I watched the presentation for that, and I literally said to my friends, I was like, I don't really know why we're getting a PS4. We don't need better graphics. PS3 already looks fine. But at the time I was like just getting back into video games. I had just started my channel. I didn't really know a whole lot about what had been going on in the world of PlayStation. It didn't occur to me how much power it requires to run a game at full HD. I didn't understand how difficult it is to run all games at 60 frames per second. I didn't realize how difficult the concept of running games at 4K, which I assume is the target resolution for games running on PS5. So moving on with the quality of our screens, moving on with the way we want to design our games to have more characters, bigger worlds, but also maintain that 60 frame per second frame rate or more, higher than 60 FPS, ideally. But given that most people will be plugging this into a TV, probably aiming for 60 FPS is probably fine. But 7 years later, after the reveal of the PS4, I now use my PS4 every single day. All my fighting games are on my PS4, even though I've got a PC as well. Sometimes just the sound cuts out, or you lose track of the mouse pointer when you're trying to stream at the same time. And generally, just for my setup, the way I have it set up, I have my PC, which is fairly powerful. I've got my PlayStation, which does all my games, and it plays it at the same speed and level of graphical prowess that you can expect at tournaments. And for fighting games, that tends to be enough. Personally, for my video making and streaming needs, consoles work really, really well for me, so I'm not all in on PC. So when the PS4 released, and what was it? Was it 2014 when it actually released? I went out and I bought it, and I thought, okay, it's exciting because, I'm running this video game channel, and it's a new console, and I want to know what's going on, but I wasn't excited about any of the games coming out on PS4. If anything, I was just waiting for Final Fantasy 15, which in the end wouldn't come out for like another year or two after that. Or longer? Was it more than that? It was a long time after that. But then quickly, between 2014 and now, 2020, PlayStation 4 has become like a central unit to so much of what I do on this channel, but just gaming in general. And the PS4 controller, the DualShock 4, ended up being the controller that I probably use the most for non-fighting games. And even when I play video games on my PC, I still plug in a PlayStation controller and hook it up with Bluetooth because it just feels so fantastically good. And even when I play Project Diva on Nintendo Switch, I actually find it easier to play on a DualShock pad because these buttons have less resistance to, they require less activation force to actuate. When you press a button on this, it goes from it doesn't press down and then you put enough force and then it suddenly goes down. But I find that it's easier to press the button with slightly less actuation force on the D-pad. I don't know. So Project Diva, I find Project Diva actually feels better on this, even though I thought because the Nintendo Switch has split buttons over here, just like split buttons over here for the left controls and the right controls. In the end, I just kind of preferred having the D-pad on the DS4. What I'm really trying to say is, I didn't think PS4 was going to be such an important object in my life, and now I own 2 of them. No, I actually own 3 PlayStation 4s, if we include the one that I've got back home in the UK. Anyway, that's all from me for now, but I'm interested to know what you think of this design for the PS5. Are you excited about the shape, the design, and the way that PlayStation 5 looks? Or are you more excited about this, the PS5 digital edition. Now, personally, I just want the disc version. It doesn't matter to me whether my console is slim or not. But I also like the ability to, I don't know, I assume it can play Blu-rays. The rental business is still kind of going in Japan, so I'd quite like the disc version personally. And in addition to that, we don't even know how much it's going to cost. Maybe if the digital version is a significant discount over the normal base PS5, who knows, maybe I'll go for the digital version instead. Let me know in the comments section below which version you plan to get. Base PS5 or PlayStation 5 digital edition. Unfortunately, doesn't have a great name like the Xbox One S all digital. The sad Xbox. I'm disappointed they didn't have a cool name like that for the PlayStation 5. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you want to check out live streams as well. I stream on Twitch, there should be a link below. If you want to hang out on Discord, talk about Japan, fighting games, anime, manga, whatever it is you want to talk about, join us on the Discord. There's a link for that below as well. And I usually post notifications when the stream goes live on Twitter, so do follow. And I'll see you all in the next Nihongo Gamer video.